Hey, Ravens fans, the Ravens have made a pick. They took wide receiver Rashad Bateman from Minnesota at number 27. Still got another pick here in a few minutes at number 31. We'll see who that's going to be. Ryan Mink and I are here to give you our instant reaction to this move. This is certainly an exciting move here in Baltimore. I think there's lots of Ravens fans, if you would have done a poll leading into this draft, if you could have picked one position, what would it have been?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people would have said wide receiver.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is the position that people have been clamoring for years. And now Rashad Bateman has the chance to kind of, tag team with Hollywood Brown to break the Ravens wide receiver curse, I mean, That's kind of been the Achilles heel in the draft for the Ravens for a long time. And now Eric DeCosta, 2 out of 3 years, his first pick has been a wide receiver. I think that smells like commitment to me from Eric DeCosta to solve that riddle.
Yeah, I want to talk about that a little bit more in a minute, but let's talk about Bateman first. Yeah. So for fans who don't know about Bateman, this guy has when you talk about what the Ravens need at wide receiver, often people say they want a big body guy who can go up and make tough contested catches, who can be a true number one, who can play on the outside, who has good speed. Well, that sounds an awful lot like Rashad. Check. That sounds an awful lot like Rashad Bateman. He's 6'1", 193 pounds. He ran a 4.41 40-yard dash. So he can be that outside guy. Yep. He can get over top of the defense because he has that speed, but he also has a good physical makeup to make those tough contested catches really sure-handed. So he has all the physical tools that you would want at this position.
Well, it's not just the physical tools. He's a technician. I think out of this rookie class, he was one of the more polished wide receivers when you talk about the route running, all those kind of things that, help a receiver come in and make an instant impact. He's not a project. This isn't just a height, weight, speed kind of guy. I mean, he's had the production, put up over 1,200 yards in his second season at Minnesota. He's done it all. So, I think that this is a player that the Ravens now, they're looking to instantly inject some playmaking ability at wide receiver in this offense. They've heard all of you out there. Trust me, they've heard you. They know that the next step for this offense, to get a little more balance with the run-heavy approach and the success they've had on that side of the ball, to balance this offense, they need some more playmakers at wide receiver. They just gave Lamar Jackson another big one.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think Eric DeCosta threw a lot of people for a loop during the pre-draft press conference when he kind of made the point and he went out there and he said it was insulting to talk about how the Ravens didn't have any wide receivers. And I think that made a lot of us, when we did our mock drafts, we'll come clean right now. We did our mock drafts and neither Ryan or I had a receiver with either of the first two picks. And also when we did it with our pre-draft analysis videos with Clifton Brown and John Eisenberg, we went 0 for 4. None of us had a first-round wide receiver, so that shows you how much we know in terms of inside information right there. But we didn't do that, and I think in part because we listened to what DeCosta said there, and I think that probably scared some of us off, and they said maybe they're going to kind of roll with the young guys on the team. They added Sammy Watkins, but clearly they felt like they still needed a playmaker on this offense, and that's what Bateman's going to give them.
Well, I don't think that wide receiver was as big of an immediate need as offensive tackle was after the Orlando Brown Jr. trade, and as pass rusher is for the Ravens. I think those are two bigger immediate needs. But wide receiver has been a need for the past 2 decades for the Ravens, and Eric DeCosta is determined to address it. And I think also, Sammy Watkins is on a 1-year deal.
Right.
We saw the Ravens had a little bit of trouble signing a free agent wide receiver this year. How much of that is because of the Ravens' run-heavy approach or whatnot, or because of the COVID situation, we don't know. But I do think that the Ravens are committed to adding wide receivers via the draft as opposed to free agency. They're a lot more affordable that way, and you can have this young nucleus that gets to grow with Lamar Jackson, grow with Hollywood Brown. Eric DeCosta's put a lot of horses in that stable, and I think that he's going to reap the rewards.
I think DeCosta deserves a lot of credit for being bold. Like this is his 3rd draft. First pick, wide receiver. Now third, wide receiver in the first round. It would have been easy to steer clear of trying to attack
say,
that.
we're going to go free agency. We're going to put that Band-Aid on it, keep going free agency and whatnot.
Yeah, and one thing we've seen with DeCosta is that he's going to be bold. I mean, he traded Orlando Brown Jr. and adds a first-round pick. And, we're going to have here, we're watching the draft out of the corner of our eye. The Ravens are not on the clock yet. They will be at some point here soon to address that 31st pick, and they're going to have a lot of options there, which we'll talk about here in a second. But DeCosta's been bold in his time as general manager. He's made trades. He's brought in Calais Campbell. He makes a trade for Yannick Ngakoue. He trades Hayden Hurst. He trades Orlando Brown, moved around the draft boards. And now he's taken wide receivers with 2 of his first 3 first-round picks.
Yep.
And I think there's something to be said for that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I think he wants to solve this riddle So Rashad Bateman, I think, too, just to get back to him, I think that this is a player who kind of reminds me a little bit of Calvin Ridley from the Falcons, who was a first-round pick a couple years ago that went right around where the Ravens were picking, and it's turned out really good for the Falcons. You know, he's just polished. He can make those tight contested catches over the middle of the field where we know Lamar likes to target his wide receivers. He fits in so many different ways. I really like this pick.
Yeah, when you talk about, I'm just thinking about how it's going to work in terms of, play it out here now. Let's think about the first month of the season and what this offense is going to look like. So you got Hollywood Brown on one side, who's obviously the speed threat, and Hollywood can do more than just run the deep route. But you're going to have Bateman. I also like Duvernay as a slot receiver. I think that he's going to take on a larger role than he had last year when Willie Snead was on the team. Do you just think, and then there's Sammy Watkins, like where does Bateman fit?
Bateman can play in the slot. He did both at Minnesota, so he's flexible in that way, and I think that means a lot to the Ravens because they don't necessarily just line up their wide receivers. This is the outside guy, this is the other outside guy, and here's our slot guy. Those wide receivers in Greg Roman's offense are moving all over the place, so I think that was an important component of picking Rashad Bateman is that he had experience inside and outside.
So I just want to talk about this draft a little bit overall, and as this thing was playing out, you and I are sitting in there watching this thing, and through the first 15 picks, I said, this thing's going really well for the Ravens. 5 quarterbacks off the board. Nobody who had been linked to the Ravens in any mock drafts came off early. Sometimes you see that all of a sudden, whoa, this guy,
pick,
at 12, wouldn't expect that, and then he comes off the board. That didn't happen. Then you saw 2 running backs go. You had some cornerbacks go, and we knew that the Ravens weren't really in the market for a first-round corner. You saw Alex Leatherwood go before the Ravens had drafted, and all of a sudden they're on the board at 27, and you say, okay, Bateman's there, Terrace Marshall Jr. is there, Azeez Ojulari is there, the offensive tackle Tevin Jenkins is there, who also is still in. I see the Bills have made the pick. Wouldn't surprise me if the Ravens go offensive line here. But anyway, a number of guys still there, and the Ravens make the decision, we're going to go with Bateman. What do you think kind of made him rise above the rest of the group at that spot?
Yeah, I think it's just that they feel like, kind of like we're saying, if they're going to address the wide receiver position, which they need to, it wasn't really a question of adding more depth to that group, right? They have a lot of young, good options. They needed a top-end option. They need a star, right? And if you didn't draft that guy in the first round, they don't have a second-round pick, your chances of hitting on a star in the third round in those middle rounds is less. Right? So I think that they felt like Rashad Bateman could give them that star in the first round and really take this wide receiver course to the next level.
A couple notes on Bateman. 2019 was really his breakout season. He thrived in Minnesota in 2019. 60 catches, 1,219 yards, 11 touchdowns. I mean, this guy was all over the field, had some really big games. Last year, production declined in a shortened season, 36 catches, 472 yards, 2 touchdowns. Dealt with COVID. That was a challenge for him. Shortened season. So
that was kind of the question, though. I mean, that is the question mark on Rashad Bateman is what happened in last season, right? Why did his production dip last season? And those are questions that he's going to get, and we'll see. I think that he's proven that he can play at a very high level. Obviously, the year before, putting up 1,200 yards. I mean, this is a guy, they always put out those way too early mock drafts. As soon as the draft ends, right, then they have the mock draft for the following season. And Rashad Bateman was projected to be a top 10 pick. A year ago, flashback, this was like maybe the top wide receiver, one of the guys off the board, and now the Ravens get him at pick number 27. That's pretty good because he had that little bit of a down year, but he's going to have to prove, hey, I'm better than I was last year, and COVID was one of the issues and whatnot. Let me mention one other thing that I thought was interesting about him, the character. This is a high character player that I think really impressed a lot of his coaches. He came in with high grades in that regard. Changed his jersey number to 0 for zero tolerance for racial inequity. I thought that said something about him as a person. And he stuck it out at Minnesota. He kind of was a late bloomer a little bit in his high school career, ended up having a lot of success in his last year and got bigger offers than what he got from Minnesota and said, you know what, Minnesota was the first team that offered, that came sniffing. I'm going to be loyal to Minnesota and stick there. And that says something about him too. So I think that deserves mentioning, kind of the person that he is.
So as we're talking about Rashad Bateman, now we can maybe turn the table a little bit here and start talking about who the Ravens are going to draft at 31, because Gregory Rousseau just came off the board to the Buffalo Bills, a pass rusher who had been linked to the Ravens in some of the mock drafts. But as we're here at 31, a number of the guys who we thought they could take at 27 are still there. Ojulari's still there. Tevin Jenkins, who, by the way, both of us had at 31 in our mock drafts, the offensive lineman from Oklahoma State, he's still on the board. So they've got a number of options. And then also the other possibility here, and I know the Ravens fans who are up right now who stayed up late on a Thursday night to watch the end of the draft probably don't want to hear this one, is that if the phone's ringing in the draft room right now, I wouldn't be surprised if it is, because first of all, that 31st pick has a lot of value. It comes with that fifth-year option for a rookie player on that rookie contract. There could be teams looking to move back into the first round, and if that's the case, would not shock me if DeCosta says, give me something sweet and I'll slide back.
Yeah, it's always like you're happy when the Ravens are on the clock. You say, wow, there's so many great options available. But then in the back of your mind, you're like, oh, that probably means straight back, doesn't it? You know? Which wouldn't be a bad thing for the Ravens. Obviously, they've had a lot of success with that model. But, I look at Tevin Jenkins here, and to me, he's just so good that I wouldn't pass him up unless I got a sweetheart of a deal. And so this is a guy that you plug and place, take the spot of Orlando Brown Jr., mauling run blocker. I mean, sign him up. Well, Week 1, Tevin Jenkins.
You're saying all that like we know the answer.
I'm not saying. I'm just saying that's the pick I make. I'm just saying that's who I pick.
We both made that pick in our mock drafts. But look, there's other options that are still on the table. Trevin Mary, safety, who a lot of people felt like, when you look at him, maybe a best player available at 27, and if he's there, too good to pass up. Azeez Ojulari, who you had in your mock at 27.
Yeah. So there's some question marks, medical question marks that are starting to pop up on some of these pass rushers, and I wonder if Azeez Ojulari is one of those guys.
One other name that I'll throw out there is Jason Oweh. Talented pass rusher. Didn't have any sacks last year, but in terms of the physical ability, he's got it all. He tested incredibly well during this pre-draft process. That's who Daniel Jeremiah had to the Ravens at 27. So he's another guy right in that mix. So I'm sure that those conversations are going on right now in the Ravens draft room. So, I'm curious, when you think of this Ravens offense and Lamar Jackson in terms of taking that next step. The Ravens have made it to the playoffs now 3 straight years, and everyone's asking that question, what's it take to get over the hurdle? What do you do to take that next step? Well, clearly the Ravens felt like improving the passing game is pivotal in that, and adding a big-time wide receiver like Rashad Bateman is part of the answer.
Yeah, absolutely. They have to have more balance on offense, right? I mean, the Ravens aren't going to get away from their run-heavy approach. They're going to keep running it down opponents' throats. They're going to run it more than any team in the NFL. That's not going to change. They're not changing their scheme. But when somebody just full-out overcommits to stopping the run, as they can do, I mean, if they play all 11 guys in the box, you're going to pass the ball, right? And the Ravens needed to have a better counterpunch to their offense for as good as they have been running the ball. Rashad Bateman certainly helps them do that. One thing that just popped in my mind is there's a lot of debate in the pre-draft talk about who do you like better, Terrace Marshall Jr. or Rashad Bateman. And it's funny, when we had Joe Ortiz on the Lounge podcast and we asked him that question straight up, he said, well, one guy's bigger, one guy's faster. And the answer to both of those is Terrace Marshall Jr. He's a bigger guy. He's a little bit faster than Rashad Bateman. But who's more polished? Who's necessarily going to be the better wide receiver in the NFL? Who doesn't have the injury question marks that Terrace Marshall came with?
Yeah.
The Ravens answered those questions with Rashad Bateman.
Yeah, one thing that we've learned is that just the size makeup doesn't necessarily make the receiver.
And he's 6'1". Rashad Bateman's 6'1".
Yeah, he's not. He has this.
He's not a small guy.
Exactly. That's a good caveat there. It's not like we're talking about he doesn't have the size, speed, and tangibles. Right. He has that. It was one thing that was a little bit interesting with him is 2 things with his pro day. Going into his pro day, I think a lot of people thought that he would run slow. That he was a guy, because you're talking about, he's more of a technician. He's more of a Anquan Bolden type receiver who runs catches. Contested catches, runs good routes, has really sure hands, but not really a burner. Then he went out there at his pro day and he runs 4.41, and I think a lot of people said, whoa, okay, so now he answered the speed question. That's not something we got to worry about at all. You can do all the stuff. I just think that was one of those moments that I think probably the Ravens looked at and they said, if there were any questions about his speed, he just answered them. We know he can play on the tape. We know he can make contested catches. And if you have the speed to go on top of that, then you get him at 27, you're getting a steal.
Yeah, you flip on the tape on this guy, and he's dynamic. I mean, he is quick, gets the ball, gets upfield, can make people miss, can run through tackles. The Ravens needed more yards after catch from their receivers. They needed somebody that could get the ball in his hands and make some people miss. And I think Rashad Bateman will bring a lot of that.
So the pick is in, Ryan. Now, we don't know who
Okay.
the pick is.
Let's see.
Well, we're at a commercial break here. So,
Oh, the commercial break.
So Roger's got to go take a break, and the Commissioner Goodell is going to come back and read that pick, but the pick is in. So for all of you who stayed up late on this Thursday night, I want to give you a round of applause, first of all. I'm sure you had a couple extra cups of coffee. Ryan ate an entire pint of ice cream to get ready for this.
Amen.
So that's how that's what we were doing as we were waiting around for the draft for the last couple of hours. But you will be rewarded with 2 first-round picks, and that's an exciting thing.
Yeah, I mean, well, we'll see, right? Well, I guess the pick is in. You're right. They didn't trade back.
Yeah, they didn't trade back.
2
Yeah.
first-round picks.
Yeah.
That's pretty exciting. You know, it's funny you talked about the 5th-year option and how enticing that is for other teams. Well, it's enticing for the Ravens, too.
Exactly.
You know, especially as they're looking to build a young nucleus and a cheaper talent pool around Lamar Jackson. That's something that we all need to keep in mind because Lamar Jackson is going to get paid in the not-too-distant future. And the Ravens need to have a lot of really good, young, talented players around him that are on their rookie contracts. That's how they're going to extend that Super Bowl window once Lamar Jackson is paid, because they're not going to have the flexibility to sign a lot of these free agents, right? So you have to bring in and you have to hit on these draft picks to make sure that you have young, cheap stars around him.
And this 31st pick, I'm sure a lot of fans know this, but just as a refresher, this is a pick that the Ravens got as part of the package in sending Orlando Brown to the Kansas City Chiefs. So this is always going to be connected to Orlando to a certain extent here because this is the pick that the Ravens got for him. You know, if they end up using it on an offensive tackle, then that would be kind of the natural. You lose Orlando, you have a new guy that slides right in to that spot. And as we've talked about, Tevin Jenkins is still there. Liam Eichenberg from Notre Dame is still there. He's also somebody that's in that conversation, in that mix. And so I guess, you know, without having any inside knowledge, it wouldn't surprise you if they go that route.
No, I think offensive tackle makes a whole lot of sense. You know, I thought that pass rusher was probably their biggest hole before they traded Orlando Brown Jr., but now they have a clear need at right tackle. I mean, they could play Tyree Phillips there. He played there obviously last year as a rookie, but I think that they're looking for a starting right tackle, young player that they can develop as a bookend to Ronnie Stanley.
Well, I think that this is something that stands out to me as we talk about best. There's always this debate. Do you draft for need or do you draft best player available? And the answer,
it's a mixture.
And the answer is always both. Well, what does that mean? And I think we're seeing it tonight. If you talk about just need at that spot, I think if you were going to rank the overall needs, I think you would have gone offensive line and pass rusher.
And wide receiver would probably be number 3.
Yeah, it would.
I would say that, you know, it's
not like it was the answer
need.
with Saul, but I think that those other two are bigger, more immediate needs. Here's the pick that Commissioner Goodell is reading right now. So we're going to pause here just for a second.
All right, Roger. Who's it going to be? Jason Oweh from Penn State, the pass rusher.
Well, there they get the pass rusher. So we spent all that time talking about the offensive lineman. They end up getting Oweh here. So what we're going to do, Ryan, we're going to send this to the press conference with Rashad Bateman. Fans, I'm sure, are interested in hearing from us, but they're probably more interested in hearing from the Ravens' new first-round pick, Rashad Bateman. So go ahead and check that out. We're going to turn it over to Rashad right now.